the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast with your host, Jackie Pilosoff.
No one should have to go through a divorce feeling alone and isolated. The Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast is a production of Divorced Girl Smiling, where every show is 30 minutes aimed to empower you, help you feel validated and understood, and connect you with some of the best divorce professionals in the industry. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and start smiling as you join us right now for the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found and always at divorcedgirlsmiling.com. Before we get started, I want to tell you about two divorce attorneys who I think are both wonderful. They're in different states. One is in New York and Connecticut. The other one is in Illinois. I'll start with New York and Connecticut. Her name is Catherine Miller, and she's the founder of the Miller Law Group with offices in New York and Connecticut. I first met Catherine in 2020 when I was a guest on her podcast, Divorce Dialogues, and I don't know many other attorneys who have their own podcast. It made me realize just how passionate Catherine was to offer her time and expertise to listeners around the country. Since then, I've gotten to know Catherine so well. I've given her referrals, and I trust her so much. She's a wonderful attorney, really experienced, highly regarded, and a really good person. If you want to learn more, you can find Catherine at miller-law.com. The other divorce attorney's name is Liz Wakeman. Liz is out of Chicago, the suburbs. Liz is a wonderful attorney. I've known her for several years. She is extremely knowledgeable, experienced. She's a certified mediator and a collaborative divorce attorney. The thing about Liz is she's just extremely dedicated, and she's really ethical, always tries to do the right thing, just takes the high road. Really good person, very, very good attorney. If you want to learn more, you can find Liz at wakemanlaw.net. And you can find both Liz and Catherine in the Trusted Professionals section of Divorced Girl Smiling. Tell me if this sounds familiar. So you're going through a divorce and you start telling your friends and they say to you, oh, you need to get a shark. Okay, make sure you have a really good attorney to fight this. Oh, I've been through a divorce. Don't let anybody mess it up for you. You need to lawyer up, and that's the end of it. So if you're listening and you've heard people saying that, this podcast is going to be about how those people are wrong. They are wrong, and you need to have a divorce strategy where everyone is going to win, and everyone means you and your kids. And I want to talk today with my guest about a divorce strategy where you will have a good divorce outcome, a really nice post-divorce life, your kids will be happy, and you'll have a good co-parenting relationship. So my guest is divorce mediator Erik Feig, and Erik is an attorney turned divorce mediator who has been practicing for several years. He's also a co-parenting coordinator and a neurodivergent informed professional. Is that right, Erik?
Disability.
Oh, disability. Okay, sorry. A disability informed professional. Hi, Erik.
Great to be here, Jackie. Thanks for having me.
Always nice to have you on the podcast, and I really love your practice. I love the way you do business. And really, I want to tell my listeners the thing I read at the beginning of this podcast, Erik wrote in his article for Divorced Girl Smiling, because he knows a lot of people who come to him who say, my friends are telling me to lawyer up. They're telling me I need to protect myself. And Erik's going to tell you that's not a good divorce strategy. So, Erik, tell my listeners why, first of all, people come to you and say these things. Is it because they're scared, they're insecure, they don't know any better? Why do they always think they need to lawyer up and go down the path of litigation?
I think that's a great question, Jackie. And I think the answer is because that's what most people think of. That's the traditional route. for divorce is the first thing you do is you get an attorney, then you get ready to do battle with each other, and you're either going to court, or the attorneys are going to negotiate, or something along those lines are going to happen. It's going to be divorce by combat. Hopefully you can do something that reduces that, but you come out of a process that way, having been through a battle. And what I think is missing is that's not the only option that folks have. And even when they have conflict, even I have a lot of people come to me and they couldn't agree if it were raining outside, that if they walked out, they would both get wet. And even then, we're able to find ways to build agreements between them without doing the damage of that fight.
And that's so good to hear. And I think that what you're talking about usually happens to people who have money. So especially if you have a decent amount of money, like let's say, I mean, I'm saying anyone who's over 100,000 net worth. You know, if you're like really young and you don't have a lot of money, nobody's going to fight it out in court because there's nothing really to fight over. But if you have wealth or substantial wealth, especially, everyone thinks you have to go to litigation. And that is not the case. You can be divorced for less than $5,000 if you're willing to do it the right way. And you're willing to be open-minded and you have a strategy. What Erik and I are talking about is shifting that mindset from divorce litigation to divorce mediation. Now, let's talk about this, Erik. So, people think that win-lose is like the goal. That's their strategy. I'm either going to win or I'm going to lose, and I'm going to try to win. In mediation, why is it that everybody wins? When I said that at the beginning of this podcast, what is it specifically that makes everybody win? What goes on in mediation for that to happen?
It's an important point. When you're in, well, let's step back for a second. Mediation, one of the keystones of the process is everybody has control of their own decision making. So unlike going through a court process where the judge will decide an outcome for you and you're spending a lot of work with your attorneys to convince the judge that you should win more than they should win. Here in mediation, what we're doing, like I call it problem solving. It's practical problem solving. People win when they find solutions and can create solutions that they all could say yes to. And what I find is by going through that exercise where you might iterate, you can ask questions, you could hear the answers, you could generate ideas with structure and with someone to help keep the discussion on track. It can lead to options that you may never have thought of if you were just volleying proposals back and forth to each other. Proposal, counter proposal, counter proposal, and trying to find a middle ground that's within that straight line from where you both start. You might come up with something, and you often do in mediation. You come up with ideas that you would not have thought of otherwise.
And your mediator comes up with ideas that you wouldn't have thought of too.
The mediator's there to help you and help you bridge the gap when you're not on the same page with each other, to ask you those what if questions. How will this work questions? What does this look like in the real world? Because so often we have solutions that sound great on paper, but when it comes to something that's durable, will stand the test of time or stand the test of reality, it doesn't always work.
Okay, Erik, I want to also ask you a question. If somebody goes and gets divorced through litigation, isn't it true that the case is public so anybody can look up and see like who got what? I mean, is that true? Because I know in mediation, it's all confidential. So if you're worried about being exposed, you don't have to worry about that. Is that true that somebody can see?
Generally speaking, if you're going through a court process, things are public unless the information is sealed or made confidential. So you need some additional steps to get confidentiality in that sense, Jackie. I think
Do people do that? Does everybody do that?
everybody, I don't think so. Some
And
do.
what kinds of information can people find out? Can they find out what your child support amount is, what your maintenance amount is?
Well, you're creating a record when you go through a process that goes through the court, and you're creating a record of all the steps. And again, I'm speaking very generally when I'm saying that this is, it can be different across different states. But the idea is you're going through a process that for things to be made confidential, a lot of it, that's an active process or an active step that has to be taken. Mediation, as a general rule for most states, goes from the other perspective, which is that your discussions are confidential. What you're saying and doing in the course of the process and what you're sharing with each other stays within the mediation, so that you have a space that's being created for you to have an open discussion with each other about what might lead to solution.
Okay, now I want to shift gears and go back for a minute to what we were talking about. And you wrote in this great article that you wrote for Divorce Girl Smiling, you wrote, here's the thing. Adversarial processes, meaning litigation, are built around finality and competition, not cooperation and flexibility. They aren't focused on helping both of you practice the skills you need to deal with the inevitable changes and future disagreements to shift from battling things out to working things out. And so that I love that statement, because when you're getting divorced, you're not just getting divorced for the moment. People think like, oh, I can't wait till I'm done. Well, guess what? You're never done if you have kids. You are going to be raising those kids. And even after they're 18, you are going to be dealing with things, life changes for the kid. Even if the kid is 25, the kid's going to get married, the kid's going to have a baby, there's going to be weddings and showers and all this stuff. Or there could be illnesses, God forbid, anything that has to do with kids. If you go through mediation, Erik, tell the listeners, what is the advantage? What do you learn in mediation that will help you through those things more than if you litigated your divorce?
I think it's what we mentioned already. You're practicing problem solving, even if it's with help. You're learning and you're practicing working things out. When you're going through a process that's based on competition, you're either outsourcing the decision making. And again, there's room in mediation for working with attorneys, working with all the resources you need. Those could be legal resources, those could be financial, those could be coaches. There's lots of tools you could bring in your toolbox and to assemble to help you through things. But what mediation does is it allows you to be the decision makers, and it allows you to work together with help on finding solutions, like I said before, that you both can say yes to. So instead of an or kind of solution, you're looking for and solutions, my way and your way. And for most, you're focusing on what you need and how to meet those needs for yourself, for your kids, so that you are doing things and having agreements that aren't just for today. And I think the point you made, Jackie, is so true. If you have a 5-year-old, when you're getting divorced, the parenting plan you're going to make for your 5-year-old is going to, I would expect, look very different when they turn 8 or 10 or 15. All of these plans need updates. They need adjustments. Things change. Their needs change. I work with lots of families that are neurodivergent, that have special needs. The needs are constantly evolving for many families.
Right. And for every family, neurodivergent or not. I mean, all kids keep changing. Let's not even mention how much money you're going to save if you use mediation, how much time you're going to save, and how much happier your child is going to be that even though his or her parents are divorced, they know how to get along. They know how to solve the problems. They're on the same team. I mean, I could go on and on like this. There's just so many advantages, but I can't go on and on because we have to take a break. So you're listening to the Divorce Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff. I'm your host. I'm here today with Erik Feig, divorce mediator, co-parenting specialist. Erik and I are talking about a divorce strategy where everybody wins. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk about 3 questions to ask yourself that is going to help you set your path to a great post-divorce life. We'll be right back. I want to tell you about a wonderful divorce attorney in Arizona. Her name is Ardenae Fox, and she's the founder of her practice, Fox Law Groups. Ardenae has been practicing family law, juvenile, and adoption law for several years. Before she became a divorce attorney, Ardenae served as an assistant attorney general representing the Arizona Department of Child Safety in dependency, guardianship, termination of parental rights, and adoption matters. Ardenae cares. She's deeply dedicated to helping people. She's smart, she's experienced, really, really good lawyer. If you want to learn more about Ardenae, you can find her at foxlawgroupaz.com. I also want to tell you that when I was a stay-at-home mom and got divorced, I had to get health insurance, which was really scary for me because I had been on my husband's corporate plan for several years. I didn't know anything about monthly payments, deductibles, rate increases, and all that goes into getting insurance. I know I'm not alone in my experience, so if you're somebody who will lose your health benefits when your divorce is finalized, I would highly recommend getting in touch with Lorena Tomasini of the Malm Insurance Agency. Lorena has been in this business for 18 years. She and her mom started the Malm Insurance Agency, and she can help you with health insurance and life insurance. I trust Lorena. She's a really, really ethical, good person, and she knows a lot. If you want to learn more, you can find her at Malm, M-A-L-M-I-N-S, malmins.com, and you can find both Lorena and Ardenae in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. And today we are talking about a divorce strategy where everybody wins. My guest is divorce mediator Erik Feig. Erik is the founder of Feig Mediation Group. He's an attorney turned divorce mediator several years ago. Great mediator, works all over the country. If you want to learn more about Erik, go to feigmediationgroup.com, or you can find him in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. Okay, Erik, in your article, you wrote 3 questions to help a person set their path so they can have a much, much better divorce outcome. What are the 3 questions? Want me to read the 3 questions and then you'll tell me about each one?
Sure.
Okay, the first question you wrote that people should ask themselves is, will the path you choose for your divorce set you up to work together afterward any better than when you started? So that's kind of what we were just saying.
Yeah, the idea is, again, and this is a question that I put out to everybody. Mediation is not always the answer, but it can often be, if it's not the path, it can be part of the path. But my question is, you're coming in at a state, very often you're at a stage where you're getting divorced, you might be feeling overwhelmed, and you're looking at your options. So if you're looking at the immediate and longer term, will that process, that path you're looking at, the one that you're considering going down, going to set you up for what comes after the judge is gone, after the attorney's work is done? Are you going to be in a better state for working together for co-parenting?
And see, Erik, as someone who went through a divorce, people going through divorce are not thinking long term. They are thinking survival mode. I just need to get through this divorce. I need to get away from this guy. I can't wait to be done to start my new life. But if anyone's listening to this, the biggest takeaway I think you can get from this episode is that you have to think long term because you don't want to find yourself back in court every year for some issue that's going on because your kids are getting older, your ex stopped paying, your ex moved in with another woman, he got a new job, whatever it is, you want to move out of state, whatever it is. What Erik is trying to say is that in mediation, you learn how to have this good relationship where you can talk things through instead of going back to court every time something changes.
You're working on functioning together, no matter how or what ways you might feel about each other anymore. You're working on finding a way to function together. And my view, my approach is to do it in a way that keeps your kids front and center. You're doing it for them.
Okay, which is the second question to ask yourself. Will it create a foundation for effective co-parenting after the divorce is complete and the attorneys and the experts are gone? So yes, this is all about learning to co-parent and make decisions. And I want to tell the listener something else, and I want to know if you agree with me, Erik. So Erik's married, I want to tell my listeners. He has not been through a divorce. But it doesn't matter whether you're divorced parents or you're married parents. Your kids will try to get away with stuff. And if they know that both parents are on the same page, they know they can't get away with it. If they think, well, mom said no, so I'm going to ask dad, forget it. It's all over. Then everything's in disarray and you have no power over your kids.
Kids are expert negotiators, and they are experts at triangulating parents, whether they're together or apart, so that they could work one against the other.
Absolutely.
We see it all the time. And when they're together, it's difficult. When the kids are able to do that, when they're apart, and there's already perhaps some other issues going on that some competitiveness, let's say, between the parents, that the kids can say, you know what? Like you just said, Jackie, I'll ask mom if dad says no, or I'll ask dad if mom says no. What do you think of that? Here, you're creating opportunities to work together and to provide them the consistency and the predictability they need.
And if you go through mediation and you learn how to be a team, that's what mediation is teaching you.
It's teaching you that you can work through them. So instead of, for instance, just assuming what they're going to say, do, feel, or, what their motivations might be, you get the practice being able to communicate better about the things you need to that relate to your kids.
Now, I want to bring something up. Let's say there's someone listening, Erik, and they say, well, there's just this one thing that we're never going to agree on. And is it possible that the couple can still go to mediation, learn all of these skills, make a divorce settlement, and then litigate on one point?
It doesn't have to be all or nothing. I tell this to families I work with all the time. Every issue that you're able to agree on in mediation is one less issue you need to fight about in another forum.
Love it. Okay, the last question of the three is, ask yourself, what kind of co-parenting relationship do your children need from both of you? And what steps and resources can you engage to make that a reality? So we just talked about how the kids need both of you to be on the same team. That's for everybody. But what about you and your spouse are the only ones that truly know what your children need from each and from both of you, right? I mean, so
Part of this is assembling your team. And that's, I say, as a mediator, I might be one member of that team to help you through a process, or to help you afterwards when you get stuck and you need some help finding those ways to bridge the divide when you're not on the same page. But there's others that also can be helpful, and there's space for that. When you work with someone like me in mediation, there's space, of course, legal advice, financial advisors, coaches, other types of supports. It's about making sure you each have what you need, so that when you're coming to a mediation, for instance, you're able to make the best decisions you can. And sometimes what we're doing in mediation is identifying those resources that you might not have thought of before, but it might be that you come up against an issue, you come up against a question, you say, you know what, I need to learn more about this, or I need someone to be my guide or my partner for working through this type of question. And we talk about that, and then you go and get them and you bring them in.
Erik, I love it. And I also love the fact that you're an attorney. So there's a big advantage there if somebody goes to Erik as a mediator, because I'm sure there's lots of legal questions, anything from like wills and estate planning. I'm not saying that you can do someone's will and estate, but I'm saying that you have the knowledge, you have the resources, and you just have general attorney knowledge. And that's a big edge.
We all bring our mileage with us, right? And the path that brought us to where we are. And being an attorney helps me know in some instances just what questions to ask. I don't have the answers, and I'm not giving advice, but sometimes it's just asking questions that might not have been thought of otherwise, so that we can talk things through that could change a whole trajectory on how things go.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Erik, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Becky, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
If you want to learn more about Erik or set up a consult, you can find him at Feig, F-E-I-G, mediationgroup.com. You can also find Erik in the Trusted Professionals section of Divorced Girl Smiling by going to divorcedgirlsmiling.com. And you can also find so many other wonderful trusted vetted divorce professionals, everything from divorce attorneys to real estate agents to financial advisors, divorce coaches, and more. You can also go to Divorced Girl Smiling to listen to more podcasts or to read articles or to sign up for my free consult. Sorry, I was just getting a call and I forgot what I was saying. So thank you so much for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you real soon.